The birth of Jesus was anticipated, not merely because it was a miraculous conception, the angel Gabriel coming to Mary and telling her, and the angel coming to Joseph and telling him. The story is told in the Bible, which could easily be literally true. Master writes that sometimes the conception of an avatar is by ordinary human means, but sometimes it can be by divine means. All of these things are possible, and only our small minds keep us from knowing what God really can do. The birth of Jesus was anticipated because there was an entire community of devotees, the Essene community from which Jesus, into which Jesus was born, and most of those who were involved with him, especially early in his ministry, were also part of that community. That community was essentially the remnant from the time of Moses that had maintained connection with the true teachings of Jesus. And into their midst, the prophets and intuition had come that said the Messiah would be born, and according to the more esoteric traditions, the many young girls were all hoping to be the mother of the Messiah. And Mary was given by her mother Anna to be trained in the temple from a very young age. And it was in the temple when Mary was carrying out her duties as a young acolyte of the temple that the angel Gabriel appeared. And according to some traditions, many people saw it. And she was told that she would be chosen. And it was not as if then everyone else was jealous. Everyone was overjoyed because this long-awaited experience was going to come. In the Festival of Light, there's lines where the devotee in the festival says, what purpose is our life? What is reality? For what end were we made? And this comes after we've gone through the quest and the revolt, and now we want to know, why was I born? And this cry goes up, why was I born? And then in the festival it says, excuse me a moment. In the festival it says, ever and again, through your awakened sons, the answer comes. We read that festival, many of us, every week, and we hear it, and we know that this is what it says. Ever and again, through your awakened sons, the answer comes. And then it goes on to tell us what the answer is, but it just leaves that sitting there. And because our human minds tend to think in human terms, we look at this extraordinarily large world that we live in, and we think one person, one physical body, one voice comes, not one in all time, but just one comes, and he answers that question. Why were we born? What is reality? In a single human body. And Swami writes about himself trying to understand Master. Swamiji told us that those of us who never knew Paramhansa Yogananda in the body, Swamiji said, in many ways it's easier for us That's not what we would normally think. We would think I would have wanted to be there. Swamiji said it was so confusing because Master was just there as an ordinary person. And yet Swami was always aware that he had the power and the presence of the divine in him. Swamiji writes of an incident when he was at the desert retreat, and he was sleeping on the floor of the living room because it was just young men being casual in that way. And he said from sound sleep, he woke up bolt upright and was lifted into a superconscious state. And he sat up to meditate, and he looked out the window, and he saw in the moonlight, Master was just walking by. Master was just walking by. Swami was sound asleep. The vibration of his consciousness brought him from subconscious into superconsciousness. And Swamiji says he went outside and knelt and touched Master's feet. And then just to make it, to confuse the human and the divine, Master was startled and thought that Swami was a ghost coming out. And of course, how do you put all of that together? Master himself, and it's number 99 in Conversations with Yogananda, because it's well worth going back and reading it, because you turn all the pages of that book and you don't remember everything. In number 99, Master discusses with Swami that it's a little confusing for Master, because after all, he is omnipresent, but then he's also human. And so sometimes he knows everything, and then sometimes people have to tell him things. What? You know? And this is where Master says to Swami, if you knew my consciousness, how can you know? And then the Gita tells us today, and the verse is just exactly this. It says, those who know who I am, this is Krishna speaking. Here I am an awakened son who has taken incarnation to be with you in this world, because as it says in the festival also, a prayer of love went up from earth and you responded. A flash of light came out from infinity, burst downward through night skies of consciousness, and was born on earth, and this is the word, for the redemption of mankind. One body, seemingly one soul. And there it is. And here we are again. Let me just a second, I lost my thought. Let me find where I was. Oh yes, the Bhagavad Gita, somebody whispered to me, thank you. The Bhagavad Gita verse, it says, if you understand who I'm paraphrasing, if you understand who I am, when you die, you'll never have to be reborn. In other words, through our awakened sons, the answer comes. These souls incarnate, they manifest the totality of our consciousness. And if through them we can understand, we see them, we see ourselves, we see all of creation for what it really is, and then we're free. And this is why we celebrate this. Why do we celebrate this over and over again? What is it that we're celebrating? We're celebrating that a prayer of love went up from earth and you responded. And when that heartfelt cry goes out, why was I born? That ever and again through your awakened sons. So we have this drama that we act out of Jesus and Mary are there. Joseph and Mary are there, with their families, and there is Saint Anne, who was Mary's mother, who was herself a highly advanced soul, who herself had hoped to be the mother of the Messiah, but then was honored that it was going to be her daughter. They're all planning for the coming of the birth of this great soul. then the government intervened. I mean, that's just so amazing when you think about it. The government intervened. There was an edict goes down. There's going to be a census so the government can get all the money that it wants. I mean, really, it's such a story of our time, isn't it? It's just, everything is always the same. There's the divine force coming through to enlighten us, and then there's the human. And even Joseph and Mary had to leave, as the story is told, had to leave Anna and all the preparations that were being done to welcome this baby. And they have to go on this long winter trek back to Bethlehem, because that's where Joseph was from, and everybody had to return to their home place. And then it's crowded in Bethlehem because everybody else has also come. The story is divine, the story is human. And the divine adjusts to the human. There's just countless lessons here. It cannot be avoided. And the story is not that we don't have to live in this world. The story is, how do we live in this world? So Joseph settles Mary, then the baby comes. And it's a baby. You know, it's not the full-grown power. It's just a little baby. Master says often, the birth of an avatar is a painless birth for the mother. So some part of the human side of it is taken away in that respect. So Mary gives birth there in the stable, as it's told, you know, with the manger. If you go to Israel and you go to the Church of the Nativity, which has been built over what is really a very elaborate stone cave. When you go into the one side, which is said to be where Jesus was born, where they don't let you stay very long, they just kind of push you through like this. But the cave was actually blocked off, and you can then go to the other side of the church and you can go into the rest of the cave, where you can really sit much more, much longer and much more easily. And you're just underground. You're in this beautiful stone place that is so much better in so many ways than any human home or any place that you might be, because it's elemental and it reduces this whole birth down to a real, just a quiet gift from God that begins so small. It just begins so small, but then like our own realization. And when Swamiji would often talk about the birth of Christ and the baby, the necessity to nurture the baby, we're not really talking about a human form then. We're talking about the tiny little seed of divine spirituality within us. And when you think of the helplessness of that little child and how everything has to be devoted to making sure that that baby thrives. And if the mother and the father, and often all the relatives, don't take care of that little tiny child, it won't thrive. And in fact, it might die. And so many of the images that the divine gives us, that's us. It's not my big, powerful, in the world, I'm going to be successful part. It's the tiny baby that has to always be paid attention to and always has to be nurtured, or else it won't grow up to what it's really intended to be. And all of us, this is the birth of Christ consciousness within. We tend to think of it as the full-grown, birth within us, but that's not how Jesus was born. Humble, in the dark, at midnight, so the tradition goes. Unknown, separated from everything. That's how the little birth of divine awareness starts within us, doesn't it? It just starts burrowing in, and very quietly, but completely thoroughly, dismantling everything that we think we are. Isn't it so? This is the world we thought we were going to be this. We thought this was where security comes from. We need this love. We have to have that. And then the little baby is born, and it just begins to dismantle it. I often think about it as, I don't understand the science of this, but if you have something radioactive inside of you, it begins gradually to mutate everything else around it, just slowly over time. So that little baby is born in us, and it begins to grow, just like a little baby will grow. Just will always grow. I was hearing the lovely lady Denise, who takes care of the children during service, talking to Christina's 2 little girls. And one is, I think, 3 and one is 5. And Denise was explaining, and I realized these are divine mysteries to small children. That the younger one will never catch up with the older one, ever. The little one will grow, but then so will the older one. And someday they'll be the same size, perhaps, but they will never be the same age. And I was so touched by, of course, they don't necessarily know this, because to us, these are self-evident facts, aren't they? So to the saints, there's all these self-evident facts around us, which is all of our desperate effort to make ourselves safe and secure in this world, are just laughable to the divine. There's only one safety in the world, and that is to know God. I did a program a couple of nights ago for Ananda's group in Russia. So, I was doing it in the middle of the night because of the time. And someone who was fairly new asked me the question, sometimes when people take Kriya initiation, then their whole life just falls apart afterward. I spoke vehemently against that. That's one of the most terrible things that people ever say to each other, and if you've ever said it, don't ever say it again. Kriya does not cause your karma. It may make you aware of it. But she asked the question essentially, how do I stay on the spiritual path? And, just trying to think it through. We say very simply, because there's no alternative. But I had to really think, why is there no alternative? Because every other idea of happiness is a myth. So it's like, it's a myth. And that's what we do for incarnations. We just keep trying to make that myth a reality. This will work, this will work, this will work. Master said, Satan keeps us reincarnating, not by making our lives a total disaster, but by making it almost work. Because if it almost works, then we believe that if we just tinker with it a little. And so we come back one more time to tinker with it just a little. And then that doesn't quite work. And so we try it again and we try it again until we say, what is reality? For what end was I made? And ever again, the awakened sons come. And they don't come in such a way that we just say, wow, wow, look at that. And then go home and think it has nothing to do with me. They come in looking a lot like us, except they know how to live. I think of it sometimes as an avatar. It's if you think of this wall between the astral world and the world that we live in, And at some point we leap over that wall and we find ourselves, we literally wake up in the human body. It's just like, whoa, look at these fingers, look at these toes, what is this? And we gradually figure out what we've got. And then we start getting really interested. We turn our back on that wall and we start reaching out like this. The baby reaches out immediately. And many babies just keep reaching out. The avatar comes over the wall, turns back to the wall, and then spends his whole incarnation burrowing back through it. And it's not like everything doesn't happen. Master was, his life was filled with afflictions. He was sued, he was vilified, he was betrayed. He was worked hard and had money taken from him. I mean, just everything that happens. He was heartbroken when people wouldn't listen to him. He loved people and then those people casually just turned away from his love. Everything that happened to you or me happened to him, but he never turned his back on where he was going. And so once we understand the life of the Master, then we understand our own lives. But there's something even much more subtle there. And there's I'd have no capacity to explain it. I can only repeat it. All the scriptures tell us that we cannot free ourselves. We have to have a guru, and then it's the grace of the guru that liberates us from our delusions. That the entity that is caught in delusion is not capable of dissolving that delusion. And a great deal of what the masters want to tell us is, give your life to me. When we do the purification ritual, the master says, this is the answer, the devotee has to come forward, the devotee has to kneel, the devotee has to say with his own voice, I seek purification. That's the longing. It's really simple. Get me out of here. A friend of mine, her son, wrote a letter to God and then gave it to her to mail. He was about 5. Moral dilemma for mother. Do I open it? Didn't take long for mother decided to open it. The letter from her 5-year-old son, dear God, get me out of here. Whatever age we are, at a certain point, a prayer goes up. A prayer of love went up from earth and you responded. Oh, we think of that Shakespearean sonnets, Master's wonderful poems of longing, but really, no matter how beautifully you say it, it comes out, dear God, get me out of here. And it's not that it's miserable and horrible. It's just we've done it enough times and it doesn't work. And there's another aspect to that that's so dear, which is and one of the proofs that we are already divine is that we can tell it's not working. And this is the line in the sand for human life. Many people think their lives are working just fine. It's not torturous, it's not horrible, so it must be okay. Just a couple of good strong whiskeys when I get home from work and nothing is really bothering me very much. It's like I just find a way to make it bearable. But something in us knows that we were born for more. And that's the little radioactive seed that begins to grow. And when that longing is strong enough, God sends the answer. A prayer of love went up and God responded. Our human griefs your love alone can mend. These are the lines we say every week and we'll say here in a few minutes. And then the awakened Son comes. Jesus is born in a manger. And to get our attention, if for nothing else, to give us the inspiration to understand what this means to us. You know, this is the answer to all my lifetime of seeking. Lifetimes of seeking. This is why Krishna says in the Gita, those who truly understand and receive, you know, who I am and what I have come to give, then it opens a doorway. The Master says, open your heart to me, and I will enter, and I will take charge of your life. Like, how long have we been waiting for that? But we have to ask, we have to open our hearts, we have to welcome the presence of the Master, and then after that we have to keep listening. We have to keep listening. We have to keep listening. So fortunately, we come around again, and here we are, the baby Jesus is born. Here we are, Master's birthday. But what a promise. He who knows my life, once this life is done, will be taken into the divine realms, never to be forced to reincarnate again. Abundant now is our hope. God bless you.